The racketeering conspiracy retrial of jailed mob boss Joe Legambi and his nephew, mob captain George Borghese, is underway in federal court.
As Fox 29's Dave Schrottweiser explains, there is a lot at stake, including a potentially deadly battle over control of the local mob.
Mr. Legambi, any predictions?
What do you think?
For jailed mob boss Joe Legambi and his nephew, mob captain George Borghese, it's make or break time. Their retrial on racketeering conspiracy charges started this week, and the result could throw control of the local mob up for grabs.
In theory, you could have three different people vying for control, or are they going to reach some kind of alliance and understanding?
Legambi and Borghese are being retried in federal court after a jury last winter acquitted them on some charges but failed to reach a verdict on others. For the 73-year-old Legambi, a conviction could end his decade-long reign as head of the mob.
Legambi established himself as a low-key boss who understood the way things were supposed to work.
Borghese's been in prison for the past 14 years after a racketeering conviction as part of the Joey Merlino mob faction back in 2001.
George has been in prison for many, many years, and he's very anxious to get back to his family.
Whichever way this trial goes, it will be decision-making time for the local wise guys.
Does everybody fall in line? I tend to doubt that's going to happen.
If Legambi and Borghese are convicted, current acting mob boss Stephen Mazzone could take the reins now that former mob boss Joey Merlino has moved to Florida. If they are found not guilty, the whole mob dynamic changes.
If everybody wants a piece of the pie gets smaller and smaller in terms of what your share is. That creates the problem, and that's what the dynamic is.
We really don't think it exists anymore.
But if Legambi and Borghese go down, Mazzone and his crew may have to compete for control of the South Philly mob with the so-called old heads from the Nicky Scarfo mob regime. They're now out of prison after 25 years behind bars. Scarfo's bloody reign left bodies in the streets for almost a decade.
The violence is always there because of their past history. The question is, does anybody want to confront them? You've got a bunch of guys who did their time, have a sense that they're entitled to this, know how the game works, and they have status and cred in the streets.
Experts say Merlino's old crew and the returning wise guys from the Scarfo faction simply won't mesh. Many point to convicted racketeer Philip Narducci as the heir apparent for the Scarfo crew.
He's the one, personality-wise, who's likely to stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, who are you? Here's who I am.
Just who becomes the mob boss will most likely be decided right after this new trial ends. Given the history of the mob here, the battle to wrestle control of the wise guys could end up in bloodshed.
What are they fighting over? Jail time or coffins? That's what it comes down to, and we've seen that again and again and again with these guys.
The trial's expected to take 6 to 8 weeks, but when it's over, mob sources say the godfathers of the 5 New York City crime families will ultimately decide who takes control of the Philly mob. At the federal courthouse in Center City, Dave Schrottweiser, Fox 29 News.